Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts, sports journalist David Todd, and from SteelersDepot.com, Dave Bryan. Just a couple of Daves, chillin', talking Steelers. Now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave. He's Dave Bryan of SteelersDepot.com, the place to get your latest and greatest Steelers information. And I'm David Todd. It's Season 9, Episode 24, and all hell is breaking loose around the Steelers as Mike Freeman writes a national article that Mike Tomlin's lost the locker room. So I went back, and I'll use your example. I got out all my fingers and my toes, and this is, I think, Mike Tomlin's 12th year. So I was able to count. This is the 12th year of Mike Tomlin's tenure that I've read that Mike Tomlin has lost the locker room. 12 for 12.
Yeah, I hope he finds it. I tell you, if they would, he should start by getting all these people on Twitter that are apparently in the locker room out of the locker room. It must be one crowded locker room with all these Twitter followers of mine in the locker room. I of course read Freeman's piece on Bleacher Report. He quotes funny how people that work for other organizations remain anonymous when they criticize your organization. But I guess an NFC South was an NFC South team, an assistant on one of those staffs says, the Steelers undoubtedly have or Mike Tomlin has lost the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, somebody went through and said, there are any connections in the NFC South to the Steelers, and I guess Jericho Cotchery's in Carolina, Brenton Buckner's in Tampa. I mean, look, here's the thing, and let's just get into this. One is there are two different things being discussed here with Dave and I. So, if you're going to come at us on Twitter, just make sure you distinguish between two things. Dave and I aren't suggesting that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers coaching staff have done a good job. Far from it. If you listen to Monday's podcast, you heard us rail on the defense and on the special teams and on the offense not getting things done late in the game when they could have moved much more effectively. That's coaching. That's one thing. Let's put that aside. There's plenty to critique, and we've been critiquing that, and that's what we spent Monday's podcast doing. The topic at hand is losing the locker room and whether guys are going out and giving full effort and, basically trying to win football games. And those are two different things. And really, this morning on Twitter, I went through the Steelers roster, literally player by player. And there are two things here. One is people often equate bad performance with being a bad guy. That's generally not the way things work. Chris Boswell didn't go from being a great guy and kind of, keep to himself and a really good locker room guy last year to being a bad locker room guy because all of a sudden he missed an extra point and a couple field goals the first 2 weeks of the season. And if you go down the list of the guys on the Steelers roster and think about guys who are disruptive and not good locker room guys, and I speak from somebody who's been in that locker room and knows some of these guys personally. I mean, I could come up with a couple names just guessing because maybe they're surly interviews. That doesn't necessarily make them bad locker room guys either. Antonio Brown beefing on the sideline doesn't actually make him a bad locker room guy. There's some things that make Antonio Brown maybe a bad teammate for sure. But don't just look at him on the sideline bitching about, maybe wanting the football and assume that makes him a bad locker room guy. He may be. But Tom Brady bitches on the sideline as well. I don't think that makes him a bad locker room guy. So the whole conversation about locker room is such a different conversation than player performance or coaching. It is a completely different thing.
Yeah, I would agree on that. When you look at the bottom end of this locker room, anyway, from year 3 players on, guys like Xavier Grimble, B.J. Finney, L.T. Walton, Matt Filer, Javon Hargrave, Matt Akavich, Tuitt, Chicolo, Bud Dupree, Zach Banner. I mean, you're already out of the year, down into some of the younger guys here. And, of course, your rookie class. I mean, who in their right mind is other than a high draft pick that's got some level of security, I mean, who among them is going to go rogue? James Harris is not here anymore. Okay, now if you want to say that Antonio Brown, man, they've got to get a better, they need to have a better, Tomlin and the rest of the coaching staff needs to have a better understanding with Antonio Brown. Sure, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in depth here in a little bit. I have a feeling, but who else seriously, on this team, are you thinking, well, that's a great example of him losing the locker room?
I mean, I don't have any because, I mean, I don't even want to, I did this and it's like, do you say because Artie Burns threw his helmet down and got a 15-yard personal foul after drawing a previous penalty against the Browns, do you say, well, he's a bad locker room guy because he's undisciplined?
Let's
aren't the same thing.
Let's go back here. Define to me losing a locker room. Give me a definition of losing a locker room.
I think outright insubordination and not following through. When coaches tell you to do things on the practice field or in games, like you go in and replace that guy. You don't go in. We see that happen. We see that happen in various sports at various times. If you lose you can lose a player. That doesn't mean you lose the whole locker room. But being shown up by players. Having very visibly discordant factions within a locker room can be, so you lose part of a team. That part of the team thinks this and part of the team thinks that because they're not pulling all pulling on the rope in the same direction. I guess those are the types of things that I would consider kind of toward losing a locker room. And by the way, just so people know, Mike Tomlin spends about zero time in the locker room. Coaches do not go in the locker room. The locker rooms where the players, and also there are plenty of coaches who will tell you and you've seen if you watch hard, be against me, put it all on me, have all your anger against me and the coaching staff. I'm good with that. Just go out and perform it. If you want to be mad at me and that makes you play better, go do it. Who were we watching just recently? I just watched a whole show on a coach who very inspirational kind of coach who said, look, I'll take all the heat. If it makes you go out and play better, fine. Blame it on me.
Right. I just have a hard time, would you consider what happened with James Harrison last year? Look, does Mike Tomlin, we talked about this as well too. Yes, he has probably different, well, there's no probably to it. He treats players differently. Antonio Brown's going to get different treatment from Mike Tomlin than, I don't know, name someone at the bottom end then let's say Terrell Edmonds or Marcus Allen, right?
Sure.
But he's worked to deserve, that kind of differential treatment.
If James Washington pulled the crap that Antonio Brown pulled, the response would be different.
Yeah, it would. I mean, he's got some good. You hear all the time about good guys and Steeler type players. I mean, there are some good, genuine guys in this locker room. Does that mean that all of them are perfect and little angels? Absolutely not. And I guess it then goes into the fact of with Antonio Brown. Look, should he have replied? Should he have done? Let's back up here to his confrontation with Randy and possibly Coach Drake on the sideline the other day. Yeah, that's not the first time that Antonio Brown's been hot on a sideline before. Somebody either said something to him or he just not liking the fact that he's not getting thrown to in a certain situation. Something set him off, and of course, being behind in the game also didn't help. All right, so you had the confrontation on the sideline. That's going to happen with someone like Antonio Brown, okay? Now, moving forward from that after the loss, now, should he have been in that locker room with the rest of his teammates after that loss? Yes, he should have.
Well, he was in the locker room. He didn't stay to speak to the media. He dressed.
Well, that's exactly. I mean, you know what I mean.
Well, I don't know that everybody knows exactly what happened. So
okay, well he got there and didn't talk to the media. He got his stuff together and got out there before the media had access, so he didn't have to answer any questions on the matter, and his teammates did.
Right.
And that's something he should. I mean, you make yourself available for 3 minutes. What are the rules on that post game? Do all of them have to make themselves available for X amount of minutes?
No, that I think in the Super Bowl or something like that they do, but in games I don't know what. I think there are rules stipulations during the week. I know that Ben has to make himself available at one time during the week, and I'm sure I don't know if I honestly don't remember the rules. If the starting quarterback of each team is required, and each team is required to give the opposing team's media one player for a 15-minute session. I think that's one of the rules. And the head coach has to make himself available for the opposing media for 15 minutes during the week. So there's some things like that, but individual players post game, I don't think any of that's required.
And how often does he answer questions? I mean,
look,
after games,
stay with 130 yards and 2 touchdowns, he's beaming at his locker, right?
Right. Should he have been there? Yes. Even as just to say, look, let me chew on this. I was frustrated. Give the canned cliche. I was frustrated. We need to, find a way to play better. Blah blah blah. However, he should have done it. Okay, he wasn't. And then, the firestorm then carries over into Monday when Ryan Scarpino, former PR department guy for the Steelers, kind of lights into Antonio Brown, saying, he wouldn't have the kind of numbers he has if it wasn't for Ben and the whole chicken and the egg type thing. And Antonio fires back to him, well, trade me. Now,
you said let's see, trade me, right?
Yeah, let's see, trade me. Something to at any point did you think that Antonio thought, man, I want them to trade me?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely,
I didn't either,
and I still don't.
Right,
but now let's get to the issue. Now, Antonio Brown. So let's get to the Mike Tomlin. Obviously, held his press conference yesterday. And the story breaks about an hour before the press conference or so, hour and a half before the press conference between, I don't know if it was Jerry or Ed Bouchette who broke the story, but that Antonio Brown didn't show. Now, it was reported by some people that he didn't show for practice on Monday. Now, there isn't an active practice on Monday. There's stretching on the field and then position player meetings. Now, I'm not giving him any air cover because there wasn't a full padded practice that it makes it okay. It's not okay. And when Mike addressed it, on the 5th question of the press conference, which is somewhat shocking that it wasn't the first question, but when he addressed it, Mike gave him a lot of air cover because it sounded like Mike didn't know why he wasn't there on Monday. So rather than kill him publicly or come to any conclusions, he basically said, I'm looking forward to talking to him today, and we'll have that discussion behind closed doors, and I'm not going to do it in front of the media. And he said, I've said this repeatedly. I'm not going to, talk about social media out here. It's not something I pay attention to. I'm not going to discuss it, and I'm not going to discuss this. Now, everybody has their right to have their view about how Tomlin should handle this. But it's hard to argue that, you want your head coach out there, if he doesn't have all the facts, kind of taking shots at the player in that situation. Now, social media and how he handles that, I don't know. Mike's the face of the franchise. He's out there. I think he should give better answers to these questions. But on answering that specific question about Antonio Brown, if he didn't know exactly what the deal was for Monday because he hadn't spoken to Antonio Brown, then of course you shouldn't answer it there in front of the media.
Right. Then not long after that, we get the report by Adam Schefter about Rosenhaus and what did you think about that statement from Rosenhaus?
I think it was exactly what I would have put out if I were his agent. I mean, you give him all the air cover you can. I don't know if it's truthful or not, but he basically said, the team was informed, but he didn't say when the team was informed. He said it was an excused absence. We don't know if that's true. He said, I had to take care of something. So, and that happens. Life happens. Sometimes, these guys can't take care of things on the weekend. They get, an off day, generally, some sort of time off on Tuesday. But, they generally are obligated, on the weekends. So, and if you got to do something when, office hours are open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, maybe he had to do something. I have no idea. I'm just saying it's not implausible. That stuff happens. Seemingly most guys can make it happen outside of practice hours, though.
That is true. And it does look bad. And once again, we talk about optics all the time. You get on social media, on Monday you say trade me, and then or you insinuate trade me. You already had a run in the previous week before with essentially threatening somebody that wrote a piece that portrayed you in a negative light, and then you were seemingly asked to put a apology out for that as well. You've had the whole turmoil with this guy for dating back to training camp and the thing with Ed Bouchette and the injury and the clown and yada yada. How are you handling this right now, today, if you're Mike Tomlin?
Well, again, it's hard to answer without information. And Antonio Brown's answer is key to this. So I don't have the right answer. I'm going to assume it was an excused absence. If it wasn't an excused absence, if you want to assume the worst, that's a great question. And the question is, do you take action that will be clearly detrimental to the team? No doubt, benching Antonio Brown for a series, for a quarter, for a half, for a game will be detrimental to the team. But do you do that because you think the impact and influence will outweigh, even if it leads to a loss, that outweighs kind of whatever kind of the loss of Antonio Brown will have, the impact it will have on his teammates, seeing that, because they're fed up with his stuff too. My guess is it won't go that way. Mike Tomlin, he has suspended guys in the past. It's happened. He's suspended Santonio Holmes. He suspended Rashard Mendenhall. He took action against another offensive player I'm forgetting. He waived LeGarrette Blount. He waived James Harrison. I mean, to say the Steelers have never done anything in any situation is factually incorrect. But I do think Mike, puts the team and the idea of winning as what they're there for. That is the objective of this team. So how egregious does how egregious do his actions have to have been? Certainly barking on the sidelines is not even remotely close to something you would suspend a player for. That's not the level of insubordination, saying, whether it was selfish or whether it was just, I want to win, get me the damn ball, because for us to win, I need the damn ball. However you want to look at it, that's not a level of suspension. If he just was petulant and pouting and didn't come to practice, which I don't think that'll be the answer, but if that's the answer, then you have to make a decision as to how you want to handle that. What would you do?
Well, how what does a fine do in this situation for a guy like Antonio? What can Tomlin do that won't upset the player probably even more, or does it matter?
I think you do what you think is right. Well, whether the player's upset or not, it's like punishing your child. Not that I have one, but
Well, what I'm getting at is, look, they're not going. If they did fine him, it's not going to be like $1 million or anything like that. What realistically would a fine be? And does it even, is it like taking 2 nickels from him?
Yeah, of course. Look, it's finding is just ceremonial, man. It's just
right. Well, what I'm getting at is how surely word leaks out about how much a player was fined inside a locker room, right?
Right, and there were rules about how much you can only fine a player a certain amount. I mean, by the CBA, you can't just say, okay, you're fined $2 million. I mean, it's just not. It's not. It's all within the union and the collective bargaining agreement's rules. You can suspend them for games and therefore whatever. So it's not going to be a money thing. So it's not a. That's not going to be it. It's the only. I mean, you can make him run sprints, I guess, or you can sit him. I mean, that's how he gets punished, and that's that probably hurts him more than anything else, because when he's sitting on the bench, he can't be making catches and he can't be getting advertisement dollars and he can't be having his smiling mug, celebrating in the end zone. That's how you punish him. But also in doing that, you obviously punish the team, his teammates, the fans. You have a greater chance of losing. So you got to weigh all those things. And people think it's really. Some people think it's easy for a coach to make those decisions, just slap the punishment on them. Yeah, there are a lot of things to think about.
Do you think he just blew off practice?
With most players, well, let me put it this way: if you gave me 53, give me the 53 players and the 10 on the practice squad. So you give me 63 players. If you named 61 of the guys, I would reflexively say absolutely not. That wasn't my answer for Antonio Brown.
So say that.
I'd say unlikely, but I certainly wouldn't say if Cam Hayward or Ali Villanueva or John Bostic or Morgan Burnett or Terrell Edmonds, I'd say absolutely not. They didn't just blow off practice. I would say 0% chance that happened. I'd say there is at least some small chance that that's what Antonio Brown did. So I think that's a good question. Yes.
I think he did. I think he just didn't want to deal with it. And
so you blew it off. You think he blew it off?
I think he blew it off.
I like that. That's a great question. I mean, that's the right question too.
Okay, and let's assume that was the case, which is obviously dangerous to do. Then what is? I mean, what is the right way to go? I mean, you're not going to bench him for a game, right? I mean, you're not going to make him.
I don't know. You said, like you said. I mean, what can you do that actually impacts him? I mean, sure, you can do the ceremonial. You fine him $100,000. Okay, you give it to charity, put it in the kangaroo court at whatever for the end of the season. I don't know what you can do that has an impact on Antonio Brown. I mean, that's the thing. If when you have star players that are making $15, $17, $20 million a year, $30 million a year, if you're Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers, how do you impact them? The only way you can do it is playing time, and playing time impacts a lot more than just them.
Yeah, you're right. So I mean, I don't know what the right answer is here, to be honest with you. I don't think you do either. Well, obviously,
no, I don't. Does sitting him for the opening series mean anything? I mean, again,
once again, it's ceremonial, like you said.
Yeah.
And who doesn't potentially hurt?
Well, I mean, maybe you do that just to say to everybody. I mean, maybe here's the impact it has. And you know what? And by the way, if you guys want to, I'd be happy to hear emails about how if you were the head coach and Antonio, the answer, we're making an assumption here that may be incorrect. But for the point of conversation, if you want to email us and say, here's what happened, Antonio blew off practice, and that's the only thing you're making a decision on how you would punish him for that, I want to hear what your answers are. I mean, I know some are going to be outrageous, cut him or whatever. But realistically, how would you punish, if at all, Antonio Brown? Email us and tell us that answer, because I'm curious.
The terrible podcast at gmail.com. Here's the thing. What did he? The tweet was just bad optics. Do you think Mike Tomlin needs any type of a social media policy? And look, you can't tell these guys not to be on social media and not to post stuff, right?
No, I mean, a lot of them make money from that. That's how Juju, created his personality. Lost his bike, went on social media. Bike was stolen, whatever, and then he became, and he played well.
It's a brand, and you can't prevent players from because look, like it or not, 80% on, well, I forget, I don't know what the real number is. I have to look, but roughly 80% of these players on a roster make whatever minimum it is for the years they're in the league, right? Of course, a handful of them still have rookie, but unless you make it to a second big contract, you've got to try to get. Most of these guys are going to be 3 or 4 years in the league at best and done, right? I mean, so you got to try to make whatever money you can, outside off the field. And if that means, being good at developing a brand off the field in today's social media, that's what you got to do. And props to Juju for that. Boy, I mean, have you seen a player just basically come out of nowhere, on the Steelers and develop such a quick, recognizable brand as he did?
Well, I think it's unusual around the league. I mean, look, he's not even the number one receiver on his team. He's young. That helps a lot. He was a relatively high draft pick, so he's not completely anonymous, but he made it because he played well and he's very charismatic, and he looked like he was a young kid having fun. And I know there are people in the Pittsburgh media killing him for that. Killing him for having fun because, maybe he ran a couple bad routes in Latrobe at St. Vincent in a practice. He had a bad practice and wasn't on page with Ben, and maybe it was his fault. And he got crucified because some of his, as a 21-year-old or whatever he is now, some of his,
he was
self-promoting. He was lit.
He was too lit.
He was too lit. He was lit AF.
Too legit to quit.
So, so some people don't like it. When guys are having fun, they want to take them down a peg. And that's what happened in the Pittsburgh media. There's a guy who wanted to take, it was Mark Madden. He wanted to take him down a peg. I mean, and look, so be it. But there's no doubt that Juju has been, maybe not no doubt, but he's arguably been the Steelers' best player through 2 weeks. I mean, Jesse James has played well, but Juju has been, I think, the Steelers' best. He's been it's not Ben. He threw 5 interceptions against the Browns, and it's not anybody on the defense. So who's been the Steelers' best player for the first 2 weeks? It's been Juju. It's not really much of a debate. So, whatever, it's not impacting his life. And this gets back to the larger point I was making this morning. And just, when you talk about losing the Steelers are 22-6-1, including the playoffs, since the middle of 2016. In that space, they're also 3-3-1 since Ryan Shazier got hurt. Okay? It's not just Ryan Shazier, okay? But they're 22-6-1. Those 6 losses came 2 against the Patriots. One was the 1-point loss at home, and then the playoff spanking they got. 2 against the Jaguars. Ben throws 5 interceptions at home. They get smoked, and then the playoff loss was a bad one. 1 to the Bears in overtime when they didn't stop the run. That was, the anthem game. And then 1 to the Chiefs where they got smoked again. The defense got smoked again. So those are the 6 losses they've had, and they have a tie. They're 22-6-1. They haven't really lost people to, they lose to bad teams. Yeah, they were favored against the Jags at home. Yeah, Ben had a terrible game. They were favored in Chicago. Chicago wasn't a very good team, so maybe they lost to a bad team. So since the middle of 2016, they have, 2 bad losses. All the off-field drama, at least to this point in time, has not impacted them on the field. I mean, it just hasn't. Yeah, I mean, you may think the Jags were a bad team in the playoffs, but the Jags probably should have beaten the Patriots in the playoffs in the AFC Championship game. They came into Pittsburgh. The Steelers didn't play well, no doubt, but you have to give the other team some credit. And then Jags went last week down in Jacksonville. They smoked the Pats. So maybe we haven't given the Jags enough credit. Blake Bortles is playing better quarterback than he's ever played. The Steelers didn't go out and get, they're 22-6-1. That's all I can say. All the off the field drama. If you're a Steeler fan, if you're Dave and I mean, I understand. I don't like a lot of the bullshit either. Let's just get it out there. But there's an argument to be made that there's no better team to follow than the Steelers because you can sit back and for the last 5 years you've gotten a pretty good winning team. I think they're 45 and 19 in the regular season. The 4 years coming into this, they made the playoffs every year. Sure, they didn't win a Super Bowl, and sure, if Yeah, there are a bunch of people out there. If you don't win a Super Bowl, you had a terrible season. Fine. If that's your gig, that's fine. That's not our gig. We're here for the journey as well. But you could argue there's no better team to watch. I mean, yeah, the Patriots, they have their drama. They win Super Bowls. Maybe it's more fun to be a Patriots fan. But good gracious, man, you have enough to talk about. And plenty of people in Pittsburgh, excuse my French again, love to bitch about what happens. And the Steelers give you plenty of ammunition for that.
All right, now what would you say to people say, well, that's just it, Dave. That's where he's lost the locker room because it's always something.
Well, I don't know. Losing the locker room would, again, to me, if it doesn't manifest it on the field, who gives a damn? I mean, their job is to go out and win football games. And if they're going out and winning football games, and if you're going to tell me, well, the chaos and all the off-the-field stuff has impacted those 6 losses, then you're stretching it for me, because I can make a damn good argument that 5 of those losses, they lost to better teams. The Jags were better. The Patriots were better. The Chiefs are better than the Steelers right now. And so maybe they lost a game in overtime to the Bears. But I don't see it manifesting it on the field, so I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I'm not buying this whole lost locker room thing either. People say, well, people act like they know for sure it is, and because someone like Mike Freeman writes what he writes, then that supports their narrative.
It does, and look, I mean, I don't agree with. I think. Look, let me say this. I think Mike Freeman's an interesting reporter to read. A lot of the stuff he writes, I don't agree with, but that doesn't mean I think he's a bad reporter. I just think if you're going to write an article about the Steelers and Mike Tomlin losing the locker room, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have an NFC North assistant coach as my go-to anonymous source.
How does one, let's assume one has lost a locker room. Can one get a locker room back? And how does one go about doing that?
As you said, you got to find it first. Here's, how you get it back? They go out in their next games. I guarantee you he'll have the locker room back. Or people will perceive he has the locker room back.
So W's equate to a locker room back, and L's equate and T's. Now we have to start using the T's.
Yeah.
L's and T's equate to not having a locker room. Is that how you determine it?
I think that has been the tried and true method. Yes.
So in other words, all this is a lot of cliches. It's easy to throw out from Joe Blow fan on Twitter to say, well, he's lost the locker room.
I don't think any 2-0 team has ever, 2-0 coach has ever lost the locker room.
Okay. Look, have faith, listeners. At some point, if you're not a fan of Mike Tomlin, I promise you, if you live
long enough,
if you don't go out and get hit by a bus or something today, Mike Tomlin will no longer be the head coach of the Steelers at some point, barring the asteroid hitting. And God, am I rooting for that. At some point, because all things come to an end sooner or later. Okay, so it's going to happen. If Mike Tomlin somehow goes 6-10 this year, I would doubt seriously that Mike Tomlin would get fired. Would you agree?
I would agree.
People say, well, you can't compare him not having a sub-500 season to Bill Cowher, because Bill Cowher didn't have a franchise quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger. What do you say to people that use that as an argument? Well, you can't compare Bill Cowher having 3 or 4 sub-500 seasons because he didn't have Ben Roethlisberger.
First of all, the argument that Mike Tomlin is underachieved because he has a Hall of Fame quarterback in his prime is just ridiculous. How many Hall of Fame quarterbacks will overlap with Ben Roethlisberger's career? 10 or more? I mean, because we can start, just start with Peyton Manning back there, Peyton Manning and Brady, and go to Breeze and Rodgers and Rivers. So that's 5 quick ones without even giving it any thought. And then you've got guys like Russell Wilson, like Andrew Luck, pick any of the young guys coming up now, Cam Newton, or any of these guys ever going to be good enough to make the Hall of Fame? Eli Manning, I didn't mention because I wouldn't put him in my Hall of Fame, but he's going to be in the Hall of Fame so the idea that, just because you had a Hall of Fame quarterback, you get titles. Well, Tom Brady took 5 of them, and he also took a couple other Super Bowl appearances away from the AFC. So, you don't just get them because you got a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the arguments that people try to use in this situation here. Look, does Mike and people say, well, there goes Dave and Dave, defenders of Mike Tomlin. One guy says, that's all Dave and Dave do on the podcast is defend Mike Tomlin. Well, they must not have heard Monday's show, right?
He said he didn't hear Monday's show.
Right.
Apologize.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, the arguments I get in on Twitter. Dave, you said this, and I said, well, show me where I said that. Then the next reply is, well, you didn't say that, but,
But let's talk about it. What do you think?
Right, yeah, but being as how I can't force my narrative, can't force you into my narrative here, what do you think about the situation? It's just silly stuff like that. Look, we have no issue. The problem I think most people have with us is we don't stand on the soapbox banging for people to get fired, I think.
Yes, correct. And we got pretty close to firing Danny Smith. Yeah, that's about as close as we get last week.
Right, and deep down inside, if a change was to happen, would we be overly shocked by it? Would Danny Smith? I mean, it would be a level of surprise. But look, this team, people say, well, fire Keith Butler now. Honest to God, if you fired Keith Butler right now, are you going to go outside the organization and hire anybody?
It's virtually impossible mid-season, and nobody does it. And nobody brings in an outside guy mid-season. You're going to change the terminology. First, the coach has to get up to speed with the players. Players got to get up to speed if the coach wants to do anything differently. It's a disaster. You put in all this time. You put in 9 months of work to have 3 months of games. You change they'll change a head coach, but they never bring in a new head coach. You just do it at the end of the year, and you let somebody else take over, and you move forward.
Right.
You're stuck. If Mike Tomlin fired Keith Butler, Jerry Olszewski's not going to be the defensive coordinator. Joey Porter sure as hell isn't going to be the defensive coordinator. Tom Bradley's not going to be the defensive coordinator in his first year, and the new defensive line coach isn't going to be the defensive coordinator. You don't have a guy on staff to become the defensive coordinator other than Mike Tomlin taking over the responsibilities if you were to fire Keith Butler. You have 2 guys. They've got 2 new guys in there.
Right, and maybe you can make an argument for John Mitchell, maybe. But, I mean, really.
He's kind of removed himself this year.
Exactly. So if you fired Keith Butler, it's Mike Tomlin's calling it defense for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. And he's got a new offensive coordinator, so he's paying attention to that. It's not it's just, like it or not, it's reality. It's not happening. And people say, no change. Well, they got 2 new defensive coaches. They have a new defensive line coach and a new – now, if people want to rip that Joey Porter's there, I'm all for it. I can't believe Joey Porter survived this long, and certainly the production from the guys on the edge has not been anything to write home about, or should be, getting Joey Porter accolades, gold stars for the coaching job he's done. So,
and I think Mike Tomlin, I think the whole, I would criticize Mike Tomlin. I think I have in the past saying, maybe there's a little bit too much friendship there with Joey that he couldn't pull the trigger on him during the offseason. Yeah, I think if there was one guy you had to look hard at last year at possibly replacing it's Joey Porter. And let me tell you, if it don't start, if things continue to go south this year, then maybe that is a change that maybe you do make in season, because it's easier to bring in a position coach than it is a coordinator. At this point. But even then, it would be a bit of surprise. The Steelers have fired Joey Porter as their outside linebacker coach and brought in X from formerly of X to coach the line. That normally just doesn't happen in this situation. So for those of you that want Keith Butler fired, Well, your alternative is pretty much Mike Tomlin for the rest of this season. Now, if you want to get into after the season's over or whatnot, and the Steelers are don't make the playoffs or whatever, and you want to get into the the Steelers should fire Keith Butler, have at it. Okay, and the same technically really with Mike Tomlin. At 0-1-1, people obviously, as usual, want Mike Tomlin fired. Who the hell are you going to replace him with? You're
right, Keith Butler.
Yeah, yeah, Keith Butler. I mean, you're not. I mean, now obviously they would. The response you'd get back was, well, Mike Munchak.
Oh yeah, clearly.
That would. And look, I could entertain that. He's a been there, done that guy. But how much else is going to change? What could Mike Munchak, quote unquote, save the season right now? What would Mike Tomlin? Maybe we need to print up them rubber silicone bracelets. That what would Mike Munchak do? Because that's evidently what people want at this point. How would Mike Munchak handle the Antonio Brown situation right now?
I don't know. I don't know how he.
Mike, look, I love Mike Munchak. He is one hell of an offensive line coach, and if you look around the league right now, is there anybody else right now that you'd rather have coaching your offensive line than Mike Munchak? Hell no. But just because he's been a head coach and is a great offensive line coach does not mean that he would make a good head coach. Right?
Yeah. Wait. So, but who Munchak for the Steelers or whatever or in general?
No, I'm just saying. If Mike Munchak, what I'm getting at here is Mike Munchak might not be the answer people think that he is.
Yeah. I don't know. Who would be the guy if Mike Tomlin were fired in season? Which, again, here we're navel gazing. It's not happening. Mike Tomlin's not getting fired this season. Period. So if Mike Tomlin broke his leg and couldn't attend the next 5 games because he had to be in the hospital, God forbid that doesn't happen. Mike Munchak would be the guy who took over the head coaching duties. Period.
Either him or John Mitchell. One.
It wouldn't be John. John Mitchell's now stepped away from the team, so it wouldn't be him. Munchak's at least there every day.
Right.
And he's done it.
I mean, you can't see Keith Butler. I mean, Keith Butler's got his hands full. Do you want him to have to worry about what else is going on? I mean, obviously not. I mean, it would probably be Munchak for sure. So, but it's just we're talking. People want us to talk. People say, "Can you write about?" I had someone on Twitter this week. Can you write about who the replacement candidates for Keith Butler would be if he got fired? And I wrote back on Twitter. He said, "I'd like to see an article on that." I wrote back, "It'd be Mike Tomlin. There's your article." Because honestly. I mean, there's no sense us spinning, which we just did for 15 minutes. There's no sense us writing or talking about who's going to be the next head coach or defensive coordinator because it's just, we gave you the options already. It's Mike Tomlin if you fire Keith Butler, and if you fire Mike Tomlin, it's probably going to be Mike Munchak. End of story, at least until after the season is over. So, why not focus on, here's an idea, David. How about try to scheme better defensively and coach these players up a little bit better, especially in some cover 2 and some quarter situations here, so you're not giving up chunk plays down the middle of the field. How about let's focus our energy on potentially seeing what this team is actually doing wrong on the field and see if they could correct that. Maybe, just maybe, that will result in a win.
Absolutely. I mean, exactly. Exactly. Again, what I opened the show with talking about, it's 2 different things here. We're absolutely not giving the Steelers coaching staff a pass or front office a pass for not, replacing Ryan Shazier. That's from the minute Sean Spence was put in the lineup. I complained about that. Dave and I talked about all offseason. Rashawn Evans, Vander Esch, who the Steelers going to get in there to replace that, because Bostic, even when he was signed, kind of a stopgap journeyman guy. You don't know how that's going to go. Steelers didn't do it. That deserves to be criticized. The miscommunication BS that we've seen in the secondary first 2 weeks of the season, just inexcusable. I don't care if you have a new defensive backs coach and you have a new defensive line coach. It just cannot happen. You had all the offseason. You had 9 months to sort this stuff out. It's ridiculous that it keeps happening. That's on the coaching staff for sure, and on the players, as Cam Hayward said, and it was written up on Steelers Depot. Cam said players got to take some of the blame, and it is the players do have to take some of the blame. And maybe, just maybe, this defense isn't that good because Artie hasn't gotten better, because Bud hasn't gotten better, because Sean Davis hasn't gotten better. This defense isn't that good. So that's maybe why they're losing games.
All right, you know who they're going to play on Monday night? They're going to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and my bookie AG currently has the Steelers favored by, as of the other day, 1.5 points on the road. What do you know about my bookie AG, David?
Well, Dave, you know that people have been talking to us about gambling. They talk to us, Dave. What's funny is people actually, believe it or not, they talk to us about gambling when gambling was illegal at Bushwood. back in the day. And so we've been talking about it. Maybe we put a shekel down here and there along the way. But we'll tell you now, the place to go is to mybookie.ag.
Or five units on the Saints on a stone cold lead pipe lock, maybe.
maybe that wasn't a winner. Maybe don't trust us. Maybe trust your own instincts. Who you're betting on is just as important as who you're betting with. Who you're betting with is just as important as who you're betting on. And our buddies at mybookie.ag, they've been in business for years. They've got great reviews online, and their mobile site's easy to use. And, we've checked it out. You win, they pay. They've got in-game live betting, overs and unders, and on fantasy points scored, and a ton of player perks. So if you don't love the Steelers each week, if you haven't taken my advice and gone against the Steelers the first 2 weeks and made cash at mybookie.ag, you can go in their fantasy guys and go over/under. These guys, they've been slammed with new bettors, and they're trying to spread out their service to give everybody the best service as possible. So if you'll deposit after 7 p.m. Eastern time, they'll give you an additional $25 free play on deposits over $100. So you go drop in 100, you get 125, and they will match it dollar for dollar. Use the promo code Terrible25. You got to do this Terrible25 to activate the offer. And if you haven't bet at all, remember, if this is your first time you're going to mybookie.ag, just use the promo code Terrible, create your account. You get up to $1,000. They'll match you for that. So you get $1,000. You get $1,000 free play on that. And then if you've already got an account in there and you drop in 100, they'll give you an extra 25. And the promo code for that is Terrible25. It's up to you guys. Don't wait make sure you wait until after dinner, 7 p.m. to get that extra 25. You play, you win, you get paid. mybookie.ag. mybookie.ag.
All right, we spent a lot of time. I think we're done with Antonio Brown and trying to look for the lost locker room right now.
Yeah, we don't have our beat writer. This is not a change in our on our flow. The Steelers do play Monday, and so we won't actually be on the air Monday. We'll be on the air Tuesday next week. But we're going to have our beat writer on Friday. Just we don't deal with the Tampa guys very often, and the guy we'd like to get a little tied up, so we're gonna do what we did last week, and we'll get into full blown Tampa coverage on Friday. But I'll tell you, it will be interesting, Dave. The Bucs are off to Fitzmagic, the great start, but you remember Deshaun Jackson's down there, 75-yard TD in the first play. Mike Evans is really being Mike Evans. Everybody thought coming out of A&M now, and then O.J. Howard. Probably a guy everybody thought was going to be great, but you get lost down there in Tampa when they haven't been very good. O.J. Howard making himself known,
and don't forget about Chris Godwin.
Chris Godwin, PSU guy. People up here, of course, know Chris Godwin, and all of a sudden you say seriously, if I gave you those names and say match them up with Kansas City's names, it's pretty damn close because look, Fitzmagic is good. Look, everybody would take Mahomes over Fitzmagic just for the point of record. In terms of QBR and passer rating for the first 2 weeks, yards thrown for, Fitzmagic has done better than Mahomes. Now, Mahomes has, I think, 10 touchdowns to Fitzmagic's 8 touchdowns. but his rating's been better. So he's been, let's just call him. He's been equally good. And Deshaun Jackson, Tyreek Hill, who you want? Mike Evans and Sammy Watkins, who you want? To Travis Kelce and OJ Howard. Okay, maybe that one's a little bit more clear. But then Godwin against Conley. I mean, they got crazy good weapons down in Tampa too.
Yeah, they got a decent offensive line with Ali Marpet now at left guard. Of course, the Penn State product over there at left tackle as well too. So this is a better team, in Tampa than what I originally thought they would be. And they do have talent on the offensive side of football. And then not only that, they got some nice youngish. Not young, but experienced and developing still linebackers in Levante David in the middle there, and they got an impressive defensive line that they rotate. Mike Tomlin made a point to say that look, this is a typical 4-3 front that they rotate a lot of bodies in there. One thing we haven't talked about is the injury report, David, and Mike Tomlin went over that on Tuesday during his press conference. Two kind of new names to watch. In this thing, Marcus Gilbert and Ramon Foster are now dealing with injuries as they prepare to play Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike Thomas says, got a couple of new ones. Gilbert with a hamstring, and Ramon Foster is managing a knee. We'll watch those guys through the week and see how they go. DeCastro obviously still dealing with that hand injury. His interview a few days ago, He sure didn't seem to know what the time frame was going to be on that fractured hand, but Mike Tomlin said on Tuesday that he has a chance to play Monday against Tampa, as does Tyson Alualu, who sat out that game against the Chiefs with a shoulder injury. And he also mentioned that Joe Hayden, of everybody possibly that sat out, inactive with injuries last week, Joe Hayden probably has the best shot of returning to play, because I think people said that he went through a nice kind of workout before that game against the Chiefs the other day there, that he probably sat out the game against the Chiefs more precautionary, that he probably could have played if it was a playoff game. But Mike Tomlin says, he had a good week of rehabilitation. We anticipate him working, but again, we'll let the result of that work and the quality of that work be our guide in terms of determining his availability. So we'll see what happens with Gilbert and Ramon Foster. Of course, the Steelers do not have to release their first official injury report of the week until Thursday instead of Wednesday because of the team playing on Monday night. Now, getting back into a few other things that Mike Tomlin said to start wrapping up here. Do you think he went too much to the old, I'm not going to paint in the broad brush, and it's just...
he said it 5 times. I mean, that's the cliche of the year so far. I mean, he said it after the game, and he said it, twice in the last question he was asked. We didn't get into the Jordan Berry thing. Is Jordan Berry going to be on the team on Sunday?
I don't know. I wrote on Twitter the other day that I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers have a new punter in Tampa. One would think that such a move would probably happen today, right? If they brought in a couple guys. They brought in the old pitcher for the Pirates, right? Jeff Locke.
Yeah, right. He can't throw the lefty curveball anymore, but he can hang it up there.
I kid people. I know the difference between the two, but I just that's the kind of the instant reaction. Boy, you get on Twitter the Steelers are so confused they're bringing in former Pirate pitchers to try to punt for them. No, Jeff Locke and Justin Vogel are the two guys they have reportedly brought in for a workout, along with long snapper Nick Meadows, who I don't think has ever. I think he spent a cup of coffee with the Colts or something during the rookie minicamp. Former West Virginia long snapper. I don't think he's done anything since then. So it was a bit of a surprise that they brought him to work out. But Jeff Locke was originally selected by the Vikings in the 5th round of the 2013 NFL draft, and has since been a member of the Colts, the Lions, and the 49ers. Not great statistical-wise when you look at just his most recent work. And then there's Vogel, who was entered in 2017 with the Green Bay Packers as an undrafted free agent. This past preseason, he was with the Browns and really didn't put up any eye-popping numbers either. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made a change, but none of these names really
Are you surprised they brought in a long snapper? Because, it's not something we talk about. It hasn't been clear to me that there have been bad snaps.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised, but I don't know how to. I'm not. I can't scout that very well.
Right, but we haven't seen it. We haven't seen much of it.
Maybe the time. There's a lot that goes into that timing, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a little bit more to Chris Boswell's misses than we're acknowledging. If Mike's bringing in a snapper, maybe there's something to that it hasn't been timed right, and it's not, it's hard to think it's not 100% on Chris Boswell, but maybe there's a little bit on somebody else. That would suggest that.
If you were going to bring in a snapper, though, wouldn't you bring in at least not just one that hasn't snapped for an NFL team yet?
Well, I don't know. Guys don't snap for an NFL team until they snap for an NFL team. Chris Boswell didn't kick in an NFL game until he kicked for the Steelers. So get the best guy you think you have out there.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think you've seen this Meadows guy even in as much as a preseason game. So it really was curious. Now, if it had been Nick Meadows and veteran 6-year long snapper X, maybe you can understand it, from there. But I found that part a little bit surprising. But we'll see. Maybe there's, maybe they're tightening that leash a little bit on Barry right now. And now they want to see how he goes out and performs because it doesn't get any bigger than this right now at this point for him, right? Oh Lord, they're mad. And now we're going to be on Monday night. But I mean, honestly, if you thought he couldn't handle the job, there should be one more chance, right? Because he can call. Mike talked a lot about that yesterday, about how special teams played, and punting, net punting in particular, played a big role, or a role, in things that went wrong against Kansas City. So, I don't. If you think you have to make a change, make a damn change. Don't. I guess what I'm getting at is don't set this theatrics up for this guy to fail on Monday night, him being Barry, and don't be surprised when he does fail.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the only question is, did he do enough in his time here that you're going to say, okay, we don't like these two guys. You bring somebody in because you're expecting to make a change. So when that happens for a specialist, they generally make changes. Now, if they had a punt off and he won his job under pressure, maybe they give him one more chance. I mean, that's the only scenario I see that happening because they have done that with kickers. You put these guys, you say, this is for your job. You think it's tough to kick a game-winning 42-yarder. It's equally tough if you've got three guys there and say the winner of the competition is getting the job and going to get a contract. I mean, that's you're trying to simulate the pressure. That does it. Maybe that's what they did with Barry. I mean, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
You know what I would do, David? Back in, I don't know if they do this anymore, but do you remember the term drunk buses?
I do not.
Back where I'm from, they had this, a lot of bars. I mean, there are a lot of popular bars down, especially one called Floribama, right there on the Florida-Alabama line. I know a lot of our listeners probably know and have potentially been there. They would actually have, people, they would have party pickup locations where they'd pick up people and carry them out there to the bar. And then when the night was over, they'd all climb back on the, we call them drunk buses. And that way they get, there was no, that way it prevented them from driving and when they shouldn't be and all like that. I would have a specialist bus, in situations such as this. I would go out and round up as many of them as I could and put them on the bus and bring them in there. I wouldn't just bring in two or whatnot. I'd say, all right, who has punted before, wants to come out and try out, and just like you said, I would have a huge. It would almost be like a job fair, invite people to Heinz Field for the spectacle and all like that. See Danny, Danny Smith will sign autographs before and afterwards, kind of thing, because that's how comprehensive I want the search to be. I obviously a little bit of hyperbole there, but do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, sure, of course.
I mean, you just don't bring in Jeff Luck and Justin Vogel, in my opinion, kind of thing. Now, obviously, they've scouted these guys, and there's a reason that these guys were chosen, yada yada. But that's just my take on it. I would, if you're going to make a change, I bring in as many. And look, maybe they did. Maybe they brought in both these guys. They thought, oh Lord. But I mean, why? My question would be is why weren't more there?
Don't know the answer to that.
And this whole pot, I got to admit, after listening, and I listened to it again this morning with the Mike Tomlin press conference, yeah, it gets kind of tiresome to hear him say as many times as he said, well, I'm not going to paint, and, I'm not going to use such a broad brush and paint with it. And then, well, that's just popcorn. Well, let me tell you, they got enough popcorn right now in that defense to have a couple of team movies, right? I mean, movie nights, because there is a lot of little popcorn, and especially in the middle of that defense with these inside linebackers, not just Bostic, but Williams as well too, when it comes to covering the deep portion of the field and properly walling off people and carrying them enough distance. So there is a lot to fix, and we'll the thing that'll be interesting to see is and I talked about this on the radio yesterday as well. You have given opponents right now in your first two games alone plenty to look at what you did wrong, and it would be silly for Tampa not to come out to try to do some of the same things, only out of a little bit of different formations, right? I mean, we talked about the whole T.J. Watt thing on who was it? Who was he singled up on? Sammy?
No, Sammy down the side. He should be an easy touchdown.
Right, and do you see Alex's breakdown on that? I mean, it was pretty much back-to-back plays. They knew that they were going, and I talked about that the other day as well too. They knew what they were going to get in a certain. The Steelers became very predictable in that situation. So don't think that the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator is not going to come out here and say, let's find out just how quickly they fix that stuff and run it maybe out of a different formation to make sure that you're going to get a similar type of look defensively, because that's what good offensive coordinators do. So, and especially, and you talked about, with this quality of receiving crew that Tampa Bay has, I think we're going to find out real quick in this game against Tampa Bay about what's been fixed and what, if they come out running the football, 7 times out of the first 8 plays, talking about Tampa Bay, shame on them.
Yes. Yeah.
On the flip side too, you see what's funny is you see the way the Steelers defense gets exposed, right? A lot of 4 vertical stuff. We saw Kansas City do a lot of empty backfield stuff. And you see these tight ends just gash right down the middle. Why don't we get to see the Steelers do that offensively?
I'm with you. Again, one of the problems is we haven't seen them be able to exploit the middle of the field the way they've been exploited in the middle of the field. We've seen the deep balls down the sideline. We've seen the short drag routes.
We see the bend being bent and dumping it off to
Connor and.
Kind of, or Jesse James breaks off his route up the field. Yeah, we see all that. But what about the stuff that, like, we saw Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense do, where it seems, what's the word, rhythmically, how's Mike Tomlin say it? Thoughtfully.
Rhythmically
thoughtfully rhythmic.
Thoughtfully non-rhythmic.
Well, okay, the opposite of that. How come we don't see that kind of stuff, on with the Steelers offensively, instead of things that seem like, 5 seconds after the football is snapped? Yeah, I get it. We see some good stuff underneath work with Juju this past week and that kind of thing. And look, we talked about that Ryan Switzer failed 3rd down play. I thought Ben Roethlisberger did a magnificent job breaking that thing down yesterday on the radio during his interview, and I kind of recapped it and added in my thoughts on that on Steelers Depot last night as well too. If you want to take a look at that, so yeah, there is a lot of things on both sides of the football that this team could do better, but at least this offense is scoring points. You'd like to see them obviously not go out and go 3 or 4 3 plays out. The first 3 drives like they did and getting a hold the way they did there. But at least the offense, we know that they're going to probably put up points. Now, if they can only get this defense sharpened up, at least be able to get a stop here and there when they need to, that sure would go a long way here.
They need a win in a bad way, change the story around the team and get things going in the right direction, because as we talked about on Monday, look, it's not getting easy. At least the next 2 games after this one are home with Baltimore and Atlanta, and then you have Cincinnati. This is a massively big stretch for this team. And, I certainly don't expect them to come out 0-5-1. And if everything breaks perfectly, they could be 4-1-1. The odds are certainly something in the middle of that. But this would be a good game on the road, A, to see Ben Roethlisberger play well, and B, to get kind of this thing back in focus on the defensive side of the football. It's got to be better.
If they lose, is it over? Are they not going to make the playoffs if they lose this game?
You pointed out, I think the only redeeming factor is that they will still have 5 division games left. So it's not over, but if they lose this one and the next one, then it's pretty close to over.
Yeah, especially with one of them. They need to win those divisional games anyway, but most definitely.
Look, they started 0-4 a few years back, and they were 8-8, and they should have made the playoffs if a guy had made a field goal. The AFC's not great. There's plenty of football to be played, but they need to get off on the right foot here on Monday night.
What's the narrative right now? If Boswell makes that field goal against Cleveland.
Yeah, the narrative is not as angry because they're 1-1 and people are like, well, Cleveland stinks, even though Cleveland obviously doesn't stink. It would be, the defense stinks, and it would be tamer for sure, no doubt.
But not much tamer, right? Especially assuming things worked out exactly the way they did against the Chiefs. But the only thing changes is Boswell hits that field goal against the Browns.
Right.
Okay. Well, it obviously didn't work that way. We shouldn't deal in hypotheticals, should we? Okay. Hopefully this podcast sounds okay quality wise. I've got to go back through this all again in my settings because I had a computer issue on Tuesday night and had to cobble something together to get this done today. So if the sound quality is a little bit less than what it's been the last few weeks, I apologize. I will work on getting this straight again. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow David Todd on Twitter at David M. Todd. You can email the show and tell us how you would handle Antonio Brown if indeed he just blew off the Monday practice. Or stretch session or whatever they did on Monday. Let us know, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to donate to the cause, if you want to donate to the Save Mike, the Mike Tomlin Preservation Society, doing business as Dave and Dave, you can do so by going to SteelersDepot.com, hit that donate button, upright navigational bar. Hey, do you like SteelersDepot.com but don't want to view all those ads? I've got an ad-free version for you for $25. Just go to SteelersDepot.com, click ad-free, and for $25 for a calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, and we'll be back on Friday, hopefully, with a Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat writer. We'll talk about, preview that game more. We'll talk about week 3 around the NFL and go from there. Have a great day.
As always, so listen to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Dave.